It is absolute unhinged lunacy that humans were able to survive the Ice Age. Like, just look at you, sitting there with your nice, warm, heated house, hot beverage with food 15 feet away in your cooled fridge, like a perfect little princess. Well, after you hear the atrocities these people back in the day went through, I promise you're never going to take your life for granted ever again. I was reading up on this the other night and have concluded that if you dropped a modern human into that environment, they would pretty much instantly turn into a weeping mess of soiled trousers. Alright, so first, let's just talk about the cold. And I don't mean modern human whining type cold, like, wah, I'm a baby, it's cold, while it's only like -8 outside. I'm talking about your nipples could forever cut diamond type cold. I'm talking never see your wiener again type cold. I'm talking freezing your bullocks off every second of every day type cold. We literally complain when the AC is set too low in the office or when we have to scrape ice off the windshield for 5 minutes. Just imagine that, but it never stops. There is no inside to go to. There is no nice, hot cup of cocoa after your wacky and wild tobogganing adventure. The only inside you know is a damp hole in a rock that smells like 18 other unwashed people and bat crap. That is your sanctuary. That's the Ritz-Carlton of the era. And outside, ooh boy, outside is a frozen hellscape of danger and death. And you know what's baffling to me? People think they'd be tough enough to survive in this era. I see these guys yapping, these return to tradition goobers, talking about how they were born in the wrong generation and how they belong in the wild. Hey pal, did you just blow in from Dumbo Village? You think you'd be thriving? You'd be a gosh darn popsicle in 20 minutes. You get a freaking mild cold today and you take 3 days off work. Back then a hangnail gets infected and you die a slow agonizing death while a vulture waits for you to stop twitching. But the weather isn't even the worst part. The weather is just the background music to the absolute chaos and anarchy that was wildlife. The animals back then were not the cute, majestic creatures we see in zoos today. They were biological freak shows designed by a mad scientist who was specifically trying to create the most terrifying things possible. Take the short-faced bear, for example. If you don't know what this is, then look it up, but maybe not right before bed. This thing was like a grizzly bear on steroids that decided to hit the gym and do strictly leg day. It stood 12 feet tall on its hind legs, and it could run 40 miles per hour. And it didn't just hibernate and eat berries, it was a hyper-carnivore. It looked at a human and saw a bite-sized Snickers bar. Imagine walking out of your cave to take a leak in the morning, groggy, freezing your keister off, and you look up and see a bear the size of a minivan sprinting at you faster than a racehorse. That is a level of fear that the human brain isn't even equipped to process anymore. I mean, we get scared for stupid stuff, like when our boss sends us a scary email. This is a 12-foot demon dog that wants to turn you into paste. And I mean, also, let's be honest, anyone who has ever been camping knows how terrible it is to pee in the early morning, and to have to leave your tent to let her rip Free Willy out in the wind. This is just like that, but 1 billion times worse. I also want to emphasize a specific point about the animals because it really grinds my gear when people downplay this. It wasn't just the bears. You had the American lion, which was enormous. You had dire wolves, which were 100% real, not some kind of fantasy. And they hunted in packs massive enough to take down a bison. You had the woolly rhino, which was basically just a huge-ass rhino with a fur coat. You had the woolly mammoth, basically a bigger and more terrifying version of an elephant, with massive tusks. And you can't forget the saber-toothed tiger, with 2 massive terrifying banana teeth that could pretty much bite you from one side of your body to the other. It is just baffling to me how anyone even survived. Every time you left your cave, you were entering a battle royale lobby where everyone else had maxed out stats and you were playing with a stick. Like, it doesn't even make sense. It's nonsensical. Alright, now let's talk about the food situation. This is another area where I see a lot of delusional takes. The paleo diet crowd loves to romanticize this. They think it was all grass-fed steak and organic berries. Oh, humans are meant to eat like hunter-gatherers. Yeah, well, you think Og was tracking his macros? You think he was worried about his gluten intake? Let me tell you what the paleo diet actually was back then. It was starvation. It was eating whatever you could find that didn't kill you immediately. Sometimes that was a mammoth, sure, if you and your buddies managed to poke it to death with sharp sticks without getting trampled. But most of the time, it was scavenged meat that was probably half rotten. It was roots that tasted like dirt. It was bugs. A whole lot of bugs. And the hunting process itself was pure insanity. We go to the grocery store today and get annoyed if they're out of our favorite brand of chips, like spoiled entitled losers. While these guys had to coordinate a raid on a creature that weighed 6 tons just to have dinner. Imagine a pep talk before a mammoth hunt. Alright boys, listen up. Half of us are probably gonna die. Gary, you're definitely screwed. But if we pull this off, we eat for a month. And nowadays you can literally just pull out your phone, click one button, and have food magically appear at your door. Could you imagine one of these chaps who are fighting for their survival every day being thrown into the way that we live for even like 10 minutes? They'd probably pass away from the sheer contrast. And I saw some people trying to argue that life was simpler and better back then because there was no social media or taxes. And yeah, I agree, social media is pure brain rot, but is it worse than having a tooth abscess in 10,000 BC? Because let me tell you, dentistry did not exist. If you broke a tooth or got a cavity, that was it. You just lived with excruciating pain until the infection went into your blood and killed you. That was your actual healthcare plan, was just the wait and die method. There's this weird nostalgia for an era nobody even remembers. People see these paintings of muscular guys in loincloths staring stoically at the horizon and think, yeah, that's the life. Well, guess what, Derek? No, it's not. That guy in the painting is 22 years old but looks 40, because the stress of almost constantly dying has aged him like milk. He's got parasites, he's got arthritis from sleeping on rocks, he's probably got lice the size of quarters. Alright, now let's touch on the darkness. I don't think we appreciate light bulbs enough, because in the Ice Age when the sun went down, that was it. Lights out. And it wasn't city dark where you have some street lights and glow from buildings. It was absolute crushing void darkness. And that's when a lot of the terrifying predators came out. Imagine sitting in your cave and the fire's dying because Gary, who's useless by the way, and no one knows how he's made it this far, forgot to gather enough wood. And you hear something breathing just outside the entrance. It's probably not what they actually sounded like, but you know. And you can't see it. You just hear the heavy wet breathing of something. That is the definition of a nightmare, and I'm sure I would immediately soil myself to the utmost fortitude. I mean, there's no dignity to be had in that situation. There's also this insidious fib going around that humans were more connected to each other back then, that the community was stronger. And sure, you had to rely on your tribe, but imagine being stuck in a small cave with the same 20 people for 6 months during a blizzard. The drama would be unhinged. You think your family Thanksgiving is bad? Try being snowed in with your uncle who thinks thunder is a god. Try sharing a sleeping space with a guy who hasn't bathed in his entire life. The smell alone would be unimaginably horrid. I honestly think the social dynamic would be like a prehistoric reality show, but the elimination challenge is just getting eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. Like, sorry Theg, you just didn't pull your weight on the berry gathering mission, so we're all voting for you to be used as bait for the cave lion. It's a cold world, folks. And I want to address the megafauna thing because I feel like I didn't emphasize enough just how large these animals were. Mammoths were absolute behemoths. And we had mastodons and the giant ground sloths. And this is super wacky. The giant ground sloth was the size of an elephant. A sloth. The size of an elephant. And it had claws the size of kitchen knives. Today's sloths are kind of cute and they move like they're in a state of perpetual lag, but this thing could probably swat your head off like a golf ball. So what I want to know is why? Why was everything so big? I don't know what goofy goober signed off on the evolution patch notes for the Pleistocene, but they were getting a little too buck wild with the scaling tools. Yeah guys, alright, let's take a beaver, but we'll make it the size of a bear. That actually happened, and they're called castroides. Giant beavers. Can you imagine getting jumped by a beaver the size of a black bear? That is a humiliating way to go out. Like, oh, how did Dave die? Oh, he got clapped by a beaver. I mean, you can't put that on your tombstone. That's just horrible. And speaking of embarrassing, let's talk about the weapons. We look at these arrowheads and spear points in museums and go, wow, magnificent craftsmanship. And don't get me wrong, it is. But think about actually using it for its intended purpose. You're fighting a gosh darn woolly rhino with a stick that has a rock taped to the end of it. That is your loadout. You're running up on a tank with a sharp stick. The confidence and insanity required to do this is borderline delusional. You have to be completely out of your wig to look at a wall of muscle and fur and think, yeah, I can take him with this twig. But I mean, these guys were desperate. So they had to do what they had to do. And I really do think we underestimate the sheer bravery and tenacity of our ancestors. They woke up every day to a hostile world and decided to stay. And I mean, they didn't have a choice, obviously, but it's still completely insane. However, there are still a lot of weirdos out there that specifically fantasize about Neanderthal interactions. We know now that Homo sapiens and Neanderthals overlapped and interbred. And I've seen people romanticize this like it was some kind of like Romeo and Juliet situation. Oh, the star-crossed lovers of different species. But let's be realistic here. It was probably terrifying. Just imagine walking through the woods and seeing a group of people who look like you, but are just way bulkier and stronger, and have completely different facial features. I don't think it was a romance novel. And yet you still have the goobers in the comments of history videos saying, I wish I lived back then. Life was so magical and pure. Shut up, Derek. You're typing that on an iPhone while sitting on a toilet with heated seats. You would last literally 4 seconds in the Ice Age. You would step out of that time machine, take one breath of that sub-zero air, and your lungs would collapse. You would soil your drawers faster than you could say, Mommy! I think the real reason people romanticize it is because they're just bored. We're comfortable now, so we just invent struggles. We crave survival because we don't have to survive anymore. But actual survival isn't very cool. It's ugly and messy as hell. There's a reason we built houses and invented central heating. There's a reason we made grocery stores. Because the alternative sucks. The alternative is waking up every day and wondering if today is the day you get trampled, frozen, or eaten. And we can't forget about the bugs. I'm sure when you think of the Ice Age, usually your brain doesn't even think of bugs. But in the summer when the ice melted a little, the mosquito and flies in the tundra would have been biblical. Clouds of them. Swarms that could blot out the sun. So you're wearing furs, sweating because it's finally above freezing. And you're like, summer is finally here. I can finally stop freezing my absolute ass off. And then you end up getting eaten alive by millions of insects. And I mean, you can't just spray some off on yourself. You just have to sit there and take it like a man. Slap some mud on your face, clench your butt cheeks, and hope for the best. It's just a miserable existence from top to bottom. There's no part of this that appeals to me. And I'll be the first to admit that I like my modern creature comforts. So the next time you feel like complaining about your Wi-Fi being slow, or your coffee being lukewarm, just suck it up, Buttercup, and remember, you could be huddled naked in a cave, freezing to death listening to a short-faced bear sniffling around outside. So don't take things for granted, goddammit.